So I was the Facebook ad buyer behind Magic Spoon's launch.
Wow.
So Gabby and Greg are still so close with them. Obviously an amazing company. I was kind of in the right place at the right time, but I really worked my fingers to the bone.
Hello and welcome to Starting Small. My name is Cameron Nagle, and what you're about to hear is a resilient story to an entrepreneur's journey over the brand that we know and consume today. At Starting Small, I believe that everyone has a story to tell under one philosophy. Everyone starts small. Even these founders have once started where you are, in their parents' kitchen, basement, out of a wagon, and many more. At Starting Small, we discuss the strategies used, the obstacles overcome, and the successes of an entrepreneur's journey. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Starting Small, and make sure to leave a review to let us know how you enjoyed it. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by John Gross of Fat Earth. John, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Cameron. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Well, I'd like to get started with your upbringing. Where did you grow up, and what would you say your childhood was like?
Yeah, so I grew up actually in South Louisiana, a small town called Port Allen, just outside of Baton Rouge, right there on the Mississippi River. Really great place to grow up. I think I had a pretty normal, traditional childhood. Raised by my mom and three siblings. I'm the youngest of four. Big community in South Louisiana. Aunts and uncles lived on the street, just like a lot of family involvement and things like that. Went to walk to school every morning. Little tiny town. I think there's maybe 5,000 or 8,000 people in Port Allen where I grew up. So pretty standard. Not a whole lot to say. It was actually nice. I really enjoyed my childhood. It was pretty straightforward, to be honest with you.
For sure. Growing up, would you say you had an entrepreneurial mindset, say lemonade stands or selling products?
I think I did. I think I was always excited by, the opportunity to do something on my own. I think as a kid, I was probably overly rambunctious and maybe a bit cocky and didn't really understand what that was and maybe how to use it. I wasn't maybe really big in the lemonade stand kind of thing, but I always had a lot of ideas. I always thought that there were things that I could do better. And as a kid, I wasn't mature enough, I think, to understand the right and the wrong way to go about handling the things that you think you can do better. And I think as an entrepreneur, as I've grown and actually gotten into that, that's one of the biggest challenges. Everybody thinks they can do everything better. There's always millions of good ideas, but really it's the execution and how you do it. So I don't know. I think I was probably pretty average in terms of my desire to really do something on my own. Or, I think as a kid, no one would have said, that he's got a really entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
But I always was looking for better ways to do things, I think, as a kid. Yeah.
Totally. What kind of aspirations would you say you had growing up? And then going into college, what did you end up studying and where did you go?
Yeah. I think kind of going back to that, I played a lot of sports. I had a pretty big social life in high school and college. And frankly, my career was not something that I thought about a lot. In South Louisiana, a lot of very similar types of jobs. It wasn't really exposed to the broader world of maybe the startup communities and these, things that now I consider to be really exciting. When you get out of high school, if you're living in Baton Rouge or Port Allen, where I'm from, I'm 15 minutes from LSU's campus. LSU is very affordable if you're in state, and so the opportunity or the thought process there was very much well, it's by default. I'm going to go to high school. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to LSU. I'm going to get one of a handful of degrees, something to be maybe medicine or lawyer or something very tangible. Those very traditional type of roles. And it wasn't really until I was probably a junior in college where I really actually started considering what I wanted to do. I actually went into college thinking I wanted to be a dentist. And the reason was because it just seemed like a good career. I didn't really think about what I really enjoy. I just saw people living maybe a certain lifestyle. Ended up getting into college. I was a really good student, but ended up not making amazing grades for 2 semesters in a row. And went to meet with someone that a mentor who was an older guy in the dental world, or someone that I knew. He was like, "Look, you need to get back on track, or this is not going to happen." I think I realized at that point, I was maybe doing it for the wrong reasons. I started taking a lot of different courses. Ended up taking some classes in the environmental science world, and just fell in love with it. Really loved the scientific approach, the methods, the way that these classes are being taught, and the way that they were encouraging us to think. And then obviously the subject matter with environmental sustainability and
Mm.
things like that were always really important to me. And it felt like a really good way for me to put those two passions together.
Yeah.
But even then, I still had no idea like what I wanted to do with it. I just was enjoying the context and the coursework. So that's kind of how I ended up in getting into environmental science, and yeah, ended up getting a degree. Went to LSU. Had a really great professor there who ended up kind of taking me under his wing. He ended up leaving my senior year and going to the University of Georgia. So
Mm.
I followed him there, got an internship as a graduate student, ended up doing this really large research project on wild turkeys. So a bit of a, probably a bit
Wow.
of a curveball here for you to think about
Yeah.
me out in the woods, trapping turkeys and doing this big research project. But I think it was actually pretty informative for me because really when you go to graduate school in some of these fields that aren't so coursework based, they give
Yeah.
you a problem. They say, John, we want to understand this question. And I think that's what entrepreneurship really is
Interesting.
you're working towards an end goal and you don't
Yeah.
really know how to get there. And that end goal is maybe going to change. And so for me, it was this animal population that we hunt. It's a big, thing in South Louisiana and across the country. It's really popular for folks to hunt turkeys or other wildlife. That's a big economic boost to the state. There's obviously a lot of important outcomes from that. And so being able to really understand how the human side of it interacts with the natural side of it. So we did this massive project on watching hunters actually move through the woods and how that affected these populations. And we did this, obviously a big research project and
Wow.
everything, but really like it was good for me because it was unstructured. I was actually doing the project in Louisiana. There was no oversight. They gave me the topic, they gave me the tools to succeed, and we're like, we'll talk to you in a couple of months. We want
Wow.
you to collect these types of data points. And, as a, I guess I was like 22, 23 year old kid, really having to just dig in and figure out what to do.
Mm.
No process was I think, I didn't know it at the time. It was very, very important
Yeah.
for my kind of entrepreneurial journey.
Interesting. So yeah, when you graduated, what did you end up doing, and especially taking this career further? Did you stay in environmental science, do anything along those lines? What did that look like?
Yes, I did. So I got recruited out of grad school for a company back in Baton Rouge,
Yeah.
in the environmental science space. And so I ended up getting hired before I even graduated. Really good job. And it was essentially like we were the liaison for big oil and gas companies. And so they would hire my firm to consult. So if you're, let's say you're Exxon and you want to put a pipeline in somewhere in South Louisiana, there's a lot of environmental due diligence, a lot of engineering due diligence, all these things have to happen. So I was on the environmental side. And so we would go out, look at these pieces of property, talk to our clients and understand what exactly they wanted to do. And we would help them get the proper permitting, do the proper research to actually be able to do the particular projects.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, going from there, what kind of time period was this? So we can get a scope on when some of your more ventures came, and then Fat Earth eventually.
Yeah, so this was just, like I said, just out of grad school. So
Yep.
this would have been like 2014 to 2016, in middle of 2016.
Got it.
And so I got that job, immediately ended up moving to their Houston office. I was following a girl to Texas. So I was trying to get to Austin. So I made my way to Houston knowing I could eventually get there. Yeah. And I just didn't really love the work. I started
Mm.
to realize like the inevitability of these projects, like they were going to happen whether I did my job well or not. And I
Yeah.
really realized there at that particular job that my interests were more in the customer service side and
Mm.
more in the client relationships and seeing these big projects through to completion and not necessarily like deep in the weeds on the technical side. I
Yeah.
realized quickly that I was the only person in the room usually who was like picking their head up and thinking about like, what is this all in service of,
Mm.
right? We get super deep in this really scientific technical world, which was obviously very important, but we kind of lost sight of like, all right, what are we trying to do here? What's the goal? And I
Yeah.
think that was something that would frustrate me a little bit. And again, going back to like, I didn't really know how, I wasn't mature enough to like voice my opinions and get things changed in a very productive way. So then time frame wise, I was getting kind of maybe to the end of my rope there with that particular job,
Mhm.
and got an opportunity to go on this travel program called Remote Year. And they take professionals, whatever, but it doesn't matter what field you're in, but who can work remotely around the world for 12 years. You go to a different country every month for 12 months, and they kind of handle all the logistics. Well, that time, a lot of my work was like very dependent on where I was. I was doing field work, doing this on the ground research. And
Yep.
so I started applying for all these random jobs. And the ones that kept catching my attention were in the marketing field, specifically like entry level Google AdWords or Facebook media buying jobs. I kept applying to them and I wasn't getting any reply because I had um, zero experience.
Hmm.
So I started reading about like what these jobs really entailed, what were the keystrokes, and I'm thinking like, okay, I think I'm a pretty smart guy. I'm hardworking. I'll just like teach myself how to do it. So I started taking all these Google courses, just immerse myself in everything Google. Still couldn't get an interview or a job, and so actually like the next thing I did, I got really frustrated. I took some ads out on Craigslist. And I said like for hire Google AdWords services. And I wrote up a bunch of descriptions and talked about the process I would go through to service these accounts. And I made a bunch of fake accounts or a bunch of email accounts at Austin, New York, LA. And like immediately I started getting phone calls. And I never actually landed any jobs from that Craigslist outreach, but I ended up getting an interview from a high-end restaurant group here in Austin, Texas. And at that time, I met another person who was in the digital marketing space, and I kind of chickened out a little bit. I was like, come with me on this interview. I was like, I'm nervous. They're going to ask me questions I don't understand. Kind of had that imposter syndrome sink in. And so she came and she joined with me, and we ended up not getting the work because I don't think we really were qualified for it. But she
Yeah.
was so impressed that she was like, well, I have some I have some like kind of spillover Google Ads work that I don't want to do. Do you want to do it? And she paid me like a couple $100 a month to run Google AdWords for kind of a well-known brand here in Austin. And the
Wow.
rest was really history. And so ended up that snowballed into like a full consultant role for this really small agency. It was really just me and her and like two other people who were freelancing. And again, like I really quickly realized like I was really good at the marketing part.
Hmm.
But I was really, really good at the customer relationships part, like my ability to tell a story and to really teach clients how to ask the right questions and to kind of provide this value that maybe went beyond like, PMAX or, lookalikes in Facebook.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of how it all started. And I
Wow.
just really loved the marketing and loved kind of helping businesses and really getting in deep and really understanding like what their actual questions were, their actual needs were, and figuring out solutions to their problems, by
Yeah.
leveraging these marketing disciplines.
For sure. Working with this lean team, even when it was like really just you, what did some of your roles look like, especially some of your maybe your scope of offerings to those clients that you bring on in comparison to Fat Earth today? Were you
Yeah.
doing everything hands on yourself pretty much?
Yeah, everything hands on. I mean, so I ended up leaving the job that I had originally.
Mhm.
Some things happened and we ended up parting ways. And then I didn't have really any work to do because this person had kind of owned all the contracts, everything was gone. So I
Mm.
went from having a full book of business to being essentially unemployed. And I was like, okay, well, let's just do it. Let's figure out how to go. And I just started reaching out to my network, reaching out to people who I thought would be able to, help me get started. A buddy of mine was like, hey, my dad works for this restaurant group. They're looking for a new website. Can you do it? I was like, absolutely. So I dove in. I'd never built a website before. I had a contact from a previous role who was a developer, got him on board. And I made a little bit of money doing it, maybe, a couple $100 literally, but got good experience. And I just kind of started to snowball. And then I was just putting myself out there with my friends and colleagues, getting little white labeled assignments from other agencies. And those services at that time were like whatever I could get. And I was doing
Yeah.
everything, copywriting, troubleshooting, Google Tag Manager. And I think that's always probably been one of my skill sets too, is just like jumping in head first.
Yeah.
In this world, like frankly, it's still the case. The half-life of a really good marketer these days is probably 6 months. If you're not paying attention, like you're going to lose, the ins and outs of these pretty complex
For
and ever
sure.
changing platforms. So yeah, back then, like I was just testing things out. I was working for gyms in town who needed to acquire new customers, working for
Wow.
restaurants. Yeah, and so that's kind of how it snowballed. And I was always big into Facebook advertising. And so I was doing, first couple of clients, I was doing all their paid media, all their copywriting, helping them with email,
Wow.
troubleshooting their websites, and really just being a kind of a do-it-all or jack of all trades consultant.
It's amazing. I'm curious at that time, what did bandwidth look like? How many clients would you bring on? I mean, that's pretty heavy scope for one person.
I mean, early on, I would do anything. If someone asked me to do something, I would say yes, unless I felt like I couldn't reasonably fulfill the scope. Like
Yeah.
if it was way over my head, but I always kind of do like, if I felt like by working really hard, I could give the person the proper output at the end of the day, then I would just take the work. And a lot of times I was very inefficient. I was making very little, dollars per hour, but I knew it was experience and at that point, I didn't have a lot of work, maybe even two or three clients at a time,
Yep.
and they were never really overlapping in a meaningful way where I was really tapped out. Now, probably was working a lot because I was building process and thinking, learning some of the stuff on the fly. It took a while and I didn't really get busy until one of a friend of mine introduced me to another agency who was white labeling my services.
Wow.
And so not my favorite business model, but as someone starting out, it was a really good opportunity for me. I actually don't think agencies should do a lot of that. Maybe in some particular cases, but there's a lot of things that kind of get lost in translation there. But it gave me, I went from, just kind of managing to all of a sudden getting access and getting to look behind the curtains of an agency and getting introduced to some brands that were pretty awesome. And that was
Mm.
really kind of the start of it.
Yeah. I'd like to get into that transition from kind of working more locally, gyms, restaurants, and then moving into D2C, which much of your business is today. What was that time period like? Was it this transition that you're describing right now, that
Yeah,
shifted?
it happened pretty quickly. So I got introduced to an agency out of California.
Hmm.
They, in hindsight, ended up being not super well run, and they were really taking advantage, or I shouldn't say taking advantage, leveraging a lot of outsourced labor. And so
Mm.
I got plugged into that system through a recommendation from a friend. And very quickly, what ended up happening was I was working my tail off. This was a huge opportunity for me, and I dove in head first. And I had a handful of clients and was running all of their media buying, and then reporting into a more senior manager who was doing a lot of the client relationship stuff.
Hmm.
And I was just grinding, and I was getting paid per account. Took on as many as I could. I was just doing like a really, the best work that I could possibly do. And I was still maintaining a few relationships on the side for my own agency.
Yep.
And so that snowballed, and a couple of clients are like asking for me by name. As those relationships directly with that agency had deteriorated, they kind of kept me in mind, and I ended up working directly for some of those companies. And during
Wow.
that same time period, another guy that was the person who actually introduced me to that original agency ended up becoming my business partner. So we started Fat Earth, particularly to service like mission-driven brands. You kind of see the roundabout way of my environmental science background, and maybe
Yep.
you're picking out some of the details of the name of the company. So John and I, and another John, we started Fat Earth Media, really not as an attempt to build an agency, but because we both wanted to take a vacation. And I was like, let's start an agency. We'll formalize it. We'll get maybe one or two part-time employees to help us. And when you want to take some time off, I'll handle all of your clients. When I want to take some time off, you'll handle all my clients, and we'll share the revenues that way. So
Yeah.
we started growing it pretty quickly. And about 6 or 8 months in, we were both in New York together on separate trips. He was like, "Hey man, can we go to lunch?" We met for lunch. We sat down. I could tell he was anxious. He's an amazing guy, by the way. I love him. But he was like, "Hey man, like I got this really big opportunity. I need to leave Fat Earth." Well, we hadn't even really started yet. And so like this kind of anxiety washed over me, like, how am I possibly going to execute on all this work?
Mm.
Um, so he and I negotiated his offboarding and kind of how the company would be handled. And then I immediately had to hire a few people just to like not misstep on the execution of the work that I was being required to do.
Yeah.
And the rest was history. And like I didn't really ever intend to set out. I didn't ever set out intending to start an agency, but that pathway of him getting this other opportunity and leaving and giving me more work that I can do and having to hire to fulfill it really
Wow.
like broke something open for me. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is awesome. Yeah, and then fast forward a little bit, going to 2020, pandemic really starts to hit. And our phones in the marketing world like never really stopped ringing. And with that previous agency, I was assigned to the Magic Spoon account. So I was the Facebook ad buyer behind Magic Spoon's launch.
Wow.
So Gabby and Greg are I'm still close with them. Obviously an amazing company. I was kind of in the right place at the right time, but I really like worked my fingers to the bone for them. And I think the rest was kind of history. And so we got pushed into the CPG food and beverage space through our experience and through our success with Magic Spoon,
Wow.
really.
Amazing. I would love to talk about kind of that pandemic period and what kind of growth you saw with both the marketing digital world and especially for Fat Earth. Clientele, say employee size, what did that scale look like from 2020 going forward?
Yeah, so early 2020, I think we had 6 employees, maybe four, maybe four. I think four in the beginning of the year, maybe 6 or 7, and probably 10 by the end of the year.
Yep.
By the end of 2021, we had about 18 or 19, and this year right now we have like 35. So
Wow.
it was pretty rapid. And then like revenue growth was kind of, pretty big jump from 2020 to 2021, and then again, not double, but a nice gradual growth.
Yep.
I mean, the pandemic was really difficult for a lot of our clients, depending on what sector they were in.
Mm.
But it was also beneficial for others. And then the types of clients that we ended up working with during the pandemic were a little bit benefited from the pandemic because a lot of our clients were food and beverage, and
Yeah.
obviously shopping in grocery versus shopping online was good. But we actually, I think the one thing that we did that was smart, and we gave our clients this recommendation too, like don't build your entire future planning and everything off of these couple of months or this year, because when things go back to normal, we want to be poised to be a well-run business or well-run agency. And so I think we put a lot of time and attention into that question of what's this going to look like?
Yeah.
And you see that happening kind of right now. Things are changing rapidly in the world we work in. And so we put a lot of time and effort into building out our agency internally. So we turned down work that we didn't necessarily want to take. We made introductions to other agencies just to say, look, we want to go a little bit slower. We want to build something at Fat Earth that's really meaningful and long lasting. We want to focus on our mission. We want to focus on our employees. And it's not for us growth at all costs. We really want to build, in a way that doesn't burn our employees out. We want to build in a way that doesn't leave this long, wake of unhappy clients, because that's what I had seen at that first agency I worked with. They essentially had an amazing sales team and very little to deliver. And they they'd land 2 clients and lose 1, or land 3 and lose 2. And I always knew, like, I really did not want to be that person. So we, middle of 2021, we kind of slowed everything down. We said, we're going to only take really amazing accounts that we really align with. And we're going to put a lot of time and effort into our internal processes. We move from Asana to ClickUp, which if you're out there listening, like, I think ClickUp is amazing. And we really just like memorialized everything that we do as an agency. And from there, it's been really tremendous. We've grown our services. I think the quality of work we're doing now is better than ever because we really understand how to deliver seamlessly. Everybody is, as much on the same page as we can be.
Yeah.
The tricky part is that, like, our products and services are going to change forever. We're never going to get to a point where everything is just set in stone because the environment that we're working in changes. If we're delivering the same product or service 2 years from now, we're probably going to be out of business. So it's kind of a challenge for a marketing agency that's always trying to stay really relevant and really on top of the trends and what's kind of cutting edge. But when you build those good systems and you teach your organization how to manage change and how to deal with change, then you can say, look, TikTok is really hot right now. Let's spin up a platform for that. Let's research it. Let's get really good at it. And let's offer it to our clients in a way that is significant. And so I think for us, having those platforms internally to manage that rapid change is what's going to be our competitive advantage as an agency over time.
For sure. I'm curious, from your POV as founder, what do you look for in a client or company that you typically bring on? So maybe you might reject some and you might take on some because of mission or product. What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have an internal checklist that goes through a couple different things. First is products. So we have really tried to align ourselves with mission-driven brands, right? You think
Yeah.
the Matches of the world. We have a client, Waterlust, who makes this amazing clothing out of recycled material, and they donate a lot of money back to marine science research. And so our objective as a company is to elevate the baseline of consumer behavior. And what we really mean by that is if we think we're experts, if we put our time and attention behind client or brand A that is doing it, in our opinion, the right way, instead of client B who's maybe doing it the easier way,
Mhm.
that we can affect how consumers actually purchase. That's our first criteria. Not every single one of our brands has a very specifically stated mission.
Yeah.
We think that all of our brands are set out and exist for good reasons. Right? Backing up a little bit, when Facebook got so cheap and became a viable business model on its own, I'm going to spin up product Y and sell it on Facebook. We
Mm.
started asking, like, does that product need to exist? That's kind of our first criteria.
Yeah.
And beyond that, it's like, do we feel like we have a good fit with the founder or the founding team? Are they going to match our level of assertiveness? Are they going to match our level of hard work and dedication? Is this a
Yeah.
side project for them? Like, we really, and I don't mean this in a negative way, we really want to work with professionals, people
For
who
sure.
come to the table who really want to succeed and who are willing to like match our level of input.
Yeah.
And when we do that, especially when we find that and we line up on the mission side, we end up with these incredible relationships, right? Like we're working for a company called Back to the Roots.
Mhm.
Nagle and Alex are like amazing. We've got to be good friends and we really connect because we believe in what their company is trying to do.
Mm.
And it just makes things easier. Like we're not coming to the table only looking at the bottom line. We're thinking
Yeah.
about, well, we reached a lot of people who are benefiting from your product. And so it makes it a bit different. We don't really disqualify people for revenue, like wholesale. We try to work with folks who either have enough runway to really give the digital marketing test an honest shot.
Yeah.
But we take plenty of clients who are, looking to scale or maybe have an untested product if we
Mhm.
think that the founders are coming to the table with a real a fire. You know what I mean?
For sure. For sure. I'd love to get into kind of from the POV of a client, perhaps. Say someone's going to join Fat Earth. What does that experience, that kind of customer journey look like? I know you offer a wide range of scope of services, but what would that onboarding look like? And what does that kind of relationship look like going forward?
Yeah. So, we're a growing agency, so our onboarding process is always changing and improving. But
Yeah.
what we really want to do is let our clients know like where they are in that process at all times. I think it's really important, and that filters down to the same way we treat weekly reporting. But really, what people come to us for, and why we've done very little sales ever for ourselves, is because we've been supported by word of mouth referrals. And
Mm.
the feedback that we get all the time is that go to Fat Earth if you want to be treated like a true partner. And so we really try to ingratiate ourselves into our clients' businesses and really understand what it is that they're trying to achieve, and
Yeah.
offer our services in a way that's helpful for that. Offer our advice and our guidance by understanding who they are and what they want to be,
Yeah.
not just like, okay, we're running Facebook for you. So that onboarding on a more technical side is pretty thorough. If you're going to come to us for email marketing and Facebook, we're going to have a pretty lengthy, our creative team is going to lead a pretty lengthy tone of voice and aesthetic onboarding where we're going to deliver you, on the email side, some one-sheeters that show all the designs. You're going to get sample call to actions, and we're going to talk about why you like them and why you don't, so that we can just continue to hit the ground running as we progress. And every month we do the deliverables, we're going to get better and better. So we really try to take time to understand the objectives. Some companies come to us and say, look, we're VC funded. It's acquisition at all costs. And so we keep that in mind when we're making our decisions. Some of our
Yeah.
clients say, look, we got 3 people here. We're not VC funded, we're bootstrapped. Every purchase has to be extremely profitable. And so we take that into account. We're not going to say, let's launch 7 new channels on your 3rd month if we know that you're trying to be profitable. But if you
Yeah.
really just want to blow your launch out of the water, that's going to be a totally different approach. And so having those deep conversations in the onboarding process is really important for us.
Amazing. Well, I like to conclude each episode with this. If you could share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've learned or regret, what would you say that would be?
Oh man. I mean, look, if you're gonna do something as an entrepreneur, you're gonna have to roll your sleeves up. I think a lot of people get in the mindset of like, I want to make money quickly, and they think that their time is too important. And I think if you're a young entrepreneur or an entrepreneur who's just starting out, you're going to have to get into the weeds. You're going to have to do things you don't want to do. I
Yeah,
was doing all my own invoicing until very recently. Like, there's a lot of things that you don't see that are behind the scenes that you really have to just be prepared to tackle.
yeah,
The other thing I would say is like, don't burn bridges. I think for me particularly, relationships have been and will continue to be probably the most valuable and important part of my personal success and my agency success.
hmm,
And like, this is marketing, digital marketing is a small world. There's
yeah,
enough work for all of us to do. It's like how when you look, if you're an agency owner, you're gonna lose clients, and the way that you lose those with class, or sending people off in a way that makes them feel like they were taken care of, that you actually did care, is
hmm,
really, really important. I think reputation goes a long way, and treat people with empathy, I think is a really big part of what makes a successful business.
for sure. Well, John, thank you so much for joining me. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out Fat Earth at fash or fat-earth.com.